Tonight we're talking about something that's near and dear to Hope's heart, and that is sleeping.
Yeah, there are very few films that really are as important, really, in the history of horror. And it was made for almost no money. There's one scene in the film that is framed to resemble, I think, the most famous painting that represents sleep paralysis. So keep an eye out for that.
And welcome back to Fright Club Live, Gateway Film Center, High Streets, in the heart of The Ohio State University. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we are from madwolf.com, and tonight we're talking about something that's near and dear to Hope's heart, and that is sleeping.
Sleeping's my favorite.
What's that story when you were a kid? You told somebody that sleeping was your favorite?
Yes, my uncle, we went on vacation to my Aunt Helen and Uncle Pat's house, and he was a much older man, and he was trying to get to know the two kids there, and he asked me, like, what's my favorite thing to do? I think I was 8, and I said, sleep. And he goes, you're a weird kid.
And it sticks around today. But tonight, though, it's not so much about sleeping as having a lot of trouble with sleeping.
Yes, yeah, sleep paralysis. You know, it's one of those things that has spawned a lot of horror over the years because it itself has been so misunderstood that a lot of people think they're seeing ghosts or they think that they're seeing demons and things, but it actually goes back to sleep paralysis.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, we talk a lot about how what's scary to people can be so intimate and so different. Yeah. But man, who doesn't get scared by the fact of not being able to sleep? I mean, that's terrifying. That's terrifying. It make you crazy.
It would.
So we're talking about sleep paralysis and horror, and there's a lot of good ones to talk about. But first, we're talking about last time here on Fright Club Live. We had a lot of fun with the best of Nick Cage.
That was fun.
A lot of fun.
That was a fun movie, Mom and Dad. That was a fun movie, and it was just really delightful to get to skip through, some of the great Nick Cage horror films. And the only thing, that really, the only real feedback we got was just this sort of communal lamenting that the Werewolf Women of the SS is never going to be a full-length feature.
Right.
We all are sad about that.
we are sad.
We bonded over that.
Yeah. Fu Manchu.
Oh, yeah.
We want to see it. That was so much fun. And we actually have a big announcement, something we've been working on for a while. We're now glad that it's come to pass.
That's right. Fright Club has a partner. Ginger Nuts of Horror is a UK-based website, the heart and soul of horror reviews. And it's a great site. gnofh.com, and we write for, they run a lot of our horror movie reviews, Mad Wolf horror movie reviews, Brandon's and George's and mine and everybody on our teams. And they also do a lot of articles, often written by horror writers, and they review horror books. They just love horror. It's a great website, and Jim McLeod runs it. Super great dude. Mm-hmm. 2 adorable dogs.
That's a plus.
So we're just really excited to partner with them.
Yeah, that is fun. So we thank you, Jim, and Ginger Nuts of Horror. Check them out. And as we've been doing for a few months now for Fright Club Live, preceding the movie, we've got a short film.
We do, and this one is directed by Schrader Thomas, who edited Obstacle Corpse. Is a great dude. It's written by Jason Tostovan and Randall Greenland, both of whom were also involved heavily in Obstacle Corpse.
Yeah.
But it's just a really super fun short film that we're excited to get to show you. Called Loose Ends.
2 days ago was Randall's birthday.
I think it was.
So we're celebrating that as well as our wedding anniversary today.
That's
we're celebrating that as well. Thank you.
That
was a cheap solicit for applause, but it worked.
That's right.
So we thank you for that. So sleep paralysis. We've got 5 to talk about. We've got a great one to show, and I'm really excited because I think a lot of has anyone here already seen Borgman? Nobody.
I love when that happens. That's my favorite.
That is so great.
I'm
really, really interested in the reactions after. Because
please come down and talk to us about it.
I can see it could be polarizing. It's really creepy, and there's some fantastic cinematography in it.
Oh, yeah.
Really weird.
Super weird.
And I'm looking forward to talking to people
about it.
Kind of
infuriating. It's
it's one of those where you wonder, you would go, man, if that was me, I'd do this. Well, would you?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
So we'll talk more about it, especially afterwards. Yeah, you're on the ride now. Okay, so sleep paralysis. So we've got 5, but actually you wanted to mention one also ran.
Yeah, there is 2023 Norwegian horror film called Nightmare at like separate, like a horse nightmare. And it's very explicitly about sleep paralysis, and it's a good one. It's a solid, creepy, interesting film, but as you may have heard me complain before, I'm not allowed to do fuzzy math on the live events.
No, don't have the time.
Don't have the time. So anyway, so we had to leave that one off, but
okay.
It's worth checking out.
Yes, fair enough. Okay, so we'll get to number 5 of our top 5 in sleep paralysis. This is pretty recent. This is from 2020. A widow begins to uncover her recently deceased husband's disturbing secrets. It's The Night House.
All houses wherein men have lived and died are haunted houses. Through the open doors, the harmless phantoms on their errands glide, with feet that make no sound upon the floors. We meet them at the doorway, on the stair, along the passages they come and go. Impalpable impressions on the air, a sense of something moving to and fro.
Yeah, really enjoyed this. This actually premiered at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival, but it was withheld from release for about a year and a half due to the pandemic.
Oh,
until
sure.
it finally went wide. And this is one, I think this is a great example of a film that's just elevated by not only the actor, Rebecca Hall, who's great, but you've got the director is David Bruckner, who did The Ritual and then the most recent Hellraiser.
Yeah.
And the writers were from Hellraiser, Super Dark Times.
Oh, I love Super Dark
well.
Times.
And this is kind of as the film goes on, in lesser hands, you could see it becoming silly.
Yeah. Yeah, but Rebecca Hall,
right.
Nothing she does is silly. I mean,
Right.
she makes everything so authentic and riveting about this movie. I know Richard agrees. And it's, sleep paralysis it's not a major theme of it, but after this character, her husband dies before the beginning of the film, and she starts having these sort of nightmares that become kind of waking nightmares, and it's a great vehicle because then, as the movie progresses, you're not sure if what she's uncovering is really happening or if she's sort of imagining this as well. And it makes for a great transition into a very nightmare world that the whole film becomes. And it's got some moments that are super creepy.
Yeah, it does. But as it goes along, it's so much of it hinges on whether you believe what she believes. And Rebecca Hall makes you believe
Yes,
that.
yeah,
And
no
that's one of
question about it.
those cases where in lesser hands, maybe you wouldn't. Yeah. It's sort of like in the first few minutes of the recent remake of The Invisible Man.
I knew that's what you were going to say.
You immediately identified and believed that Elizabeth Moss's character was a battered woman.
Oh, for sure.
No dialogue, you believed it.
Yep.
And in this case, Rebecca Hall makes you believe what she's believing,
Yes.
even though you could see it break down into silliness. But it doesn't. It's really effective.
And it looks great. It's really gorgeously shot, gorgeously shot.
And it doesn't have, a major twist, but kind of, when you figure out what's going on and what the husband was doing. And it's interesting, too, when early on, when Beth, the Rebecca Hall's character, is flipping through old photos on her husband's phone, one of the first that she comes to is a picture of two men laughing, and those are the screenwriters.
Oh.
Got their cameo in there. So that is number 5 on our sleep paralysis horror originally from 2020. It's The Night House with Rebecca Hall. Like that one. So moving up to number 4. This was from a little bit earlier, from 2010. A family looks to prevent evil spirits from trapping their comatose child in a realm called the Further Insidious.
I went into Dalton's room. There was something in there with him. I know someone who can help. I want to leave. I want to leave this house.
What is it?
It's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
I think that this is a really interesting concept, like twist on sleep paralysis, because we're not seeing it from, usually you see it from sort of the dreamer's perspective, because that is scary, to be involved in sleep paralysis, to see the nightmare and not be able to do anything about it. But I think maybe it's scarier even more to see what's happening to the dreamer when the dreamer is your son. And just those horrible images, that creepy figure in his bedroom.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I love about this movie, which I think honestly is my favorite James Wan film. What I love about this movie, a lot of times then once a film crosses over and goes into an imaginary land like The Further, the film can't pull it off. Usually it's like it extends sort of imagination, and you can't describe sort of or show to a viewer what they see hell being like, or what they see whatever this sort of realm would be like. But I love The Further, and I love what it looks like when it invades their house, when Tiny Tim comes on. What a perfect choice that song
Tiny
was.
Tim. Yeah.
So I just remember the first time I saw it being so impressed by this movie.
Yeah, it made just over $100 million. Budget was only $1.5 million. So it became one of the most profitable films of 2011. I think it's by far the best of the series.
Oh, well, sure.
For sure. And like you said, one of the best of James Wan's. And it's the first, the film, but now that they've gone on with sequels back and forth, it's the third film, I think, in the chronology of Sinister. But you're right. I love some of the imagery, even if you don't call it a quote-unquote shock scare, but some of those, just the face is good enough. Yeah, really, really well done and creepy. And it also benefits from solid performances as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Rose Byrne is great in everything, and Lynn Shay is great in this movie, and I mean, just top to bottom, everybody is really good in it.
And it also has a few callbacks, a few homages to other films. I mean, you've got the stake scene that's clearly like Poltergeist.
Yeah.
This is sort of a callback there. There's one in the seance scene. They scribble help, kind of reminds of The Changeling.
Sure.
With George C. Scott.
Yeah.
And even though I haven't seen it, people have pointed out that it's got plot similarities with an episode of Unsolved Mysteries called Ghost Boy.
Oh.
So I don't know. Any Unsolved Mysteries fans? Yes?
Yeah.
Is that true? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, never. I know that show has a lot of fans.
Yeah.
But
Well, now we got to go YouTube that later.
Yeah, we got to look at it. So that is the original Insidious. Yeah, the best from the series, I think, from 2010. That is number 4 on our list of sleep paralysis horror. And number 3, well, you knew this was going to be on there. The classic from 1984. Teenager Nancy Thompson must uncover the dark truth concealed by her parents after she and her friends become targets of the spirit of a serial killer. It's A Nightmare on Elm Street.
No one knows where it came from or who it will visit next.
Nancy, there's something wrong with you. You're imagining things.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
A new masterpiece in fantasy terror. Nightmare on Elm Street.
You know, I think I've said on a few occasions I'm not the biggest fan of slashers, 80s slashers. This one is pretty ingenious. I mean, the whole premise is pretty ingenious, and this one holds up and, of course, sets the stage for so much of what came after. And once again, as we've talked many times on this podcast, another time where Wes Craven just reset the stakes of horror, I think.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. And he did it again with Scream. He had already done it with Last House on the Left and with The Hills Have Eyes. But yeah, there are very few films that really are as important, really, in the history of horror as the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And it was made for almost no money. And one of the things that was so incredibly effective about it, it's hard now to think back to a time before this movie. But, when it came out, the idea that no matter what you do, you cannot go to sleep.
Right.
You can't, because then you're going, that to me, because we talked earlier about my hobby, that was the most terrifying idea to me, because that's the first thing I want to do when I'm afraid, when I'm unhappy, when I'm anything. I'm going to take a little nap.
Well, and it's something that everyone can
can't
instantly
not do.
relate to it. Oh my God, what if I could never sleep?
Yeah.
Even if you don't enjoy sleeping as much as you do, you still could think, oh my God.
Yeah.
How long before I just went crazy?
Yeah, for sure. And I know Wes Craven says that he was inspired not only by stories of sleep paralysis, but by stories of a suicide that in I think a small town in Japan, that all of a sudden that all of these other suicides happened. It was like this sort of group think that nobody was discussing with each other, and that at some point one of the families said that they were dreaming of it, and that was really the thing that sparked it. Plus, a lot of research into sleep paralysis, and it turned into a phenomenon.
Yeah, it's such an interesting premise, and it reminds me, since we were just talking about it, of how long could you go without sleep? Years ago, when I was out a different radio station, one of our guys from the morning show did a stunt where he tried to see, he actually tried to set the Guinness Book of Records for staying awake the longest, and he didn't do it, but he stayed awake for about 100 hours. And we were all there when he finally stopped, and he was hallucinating by the end of it. I mean, straight up hallucinating. They came and they had a limo out front to take him home, and I think he said he slept for maybe 48 hours straight. But he was straight up hallucinating by the end of it.
Just to give you a sense of this person, is a friend of ours, his name is Rick. He also, as a stunt, let them bury him alive. And then there was you could look down. There was sort of this tube that went down, and the top was glass. So you could not only was he buried alive, but passersby were invited to look down into his misery. Yeah. And
insane.
We would lay awake at night going, "Oh my God, Rick is still under the ground. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm still not over that."
I know. It was crazy because there's no way. I mean, don't even look my way when you're talking about that. But anyway, the point is, you go without sleep for a long time.
Rick Knight's insane.
He's insane, but you would freak out. But it's one of those things, like all of this subject that we're talking about, that just gets you right away because everyone can relate to it. And as I've said many times when we talk about this movie, it got me right away from the trailer, the big arms.
Yeah.
When he's walking down the street and put his big arms out there, that was just creepy.
Yeah. But there are a lot of incredibly great kills in this movie.
Yeah, there really are. This is the one. After this, for me, not so much. But this was a classic from 1984, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original. Number 3 on our sleep paralysis horror. All right, so number 2, we're up to the one we're going to see tonight. So we're not going to talk much about it. A vagrant enters the lives of an arrogant upper-class family, turning their lives into a psychological nightmare in the process. Borgman.
Dr. Baumgarten?
Ja.
Er is iets om ons heen, Richard. Iets wat buiten ons is en af en toe naar binnen glipt.
Okay, we already established that no one has seen it, which is awesome. So we'll just say a couple of things. It actually became, in 2013 when it came out, became the first Dutch movie in 38 years to be selected for the Cannes Film Festival. Mads Mikkelsen was actually considered for the lead role, but he read the script, wanted to do it, but they couldn't work it out. So that would have been cool. Although, I think you'll agree, this performance, when you see it, very, very good.
Now, I just wish I didn't know that, because
sorry.
now I'm just going to picture Mads Mikkelsen. Although, let's be honest, who wouldn't let him in their house? So maybe this is better casting.
Maybe that's why. There you go. And just a little bit about, I don't think this is a spoiler, but the behavior of Borgman closely resembles that of an Alp, which is a nightmare demon from German folklore. Mm-hmm. A lot about this is rooted in folklore. So really...
I want to say one thing, is that you'll see there's one scene in the film that is framed to resemble, I think, the most famous painting that represents sleep paralysis. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, that is true. So by all means, come down and we will talk afterwards. Can't wait to get your reactions to Borgman, which we'll see here in a few minutes. But we'll take it up to number 1, and this is one we were talking about in Happy Hour a little bit. This is from 2015, a documentary, a look at the frightening condition that plagues thousands, sleep paralysis. It's called The Nightmare.
I began hearing voices and screams and crying. I would hear all the sounds of hell. And that is when the Shadow Man would come and he would walk disjointed.
It's a kind of horror that is worse than like in the movies.
You are going to die.
You know, we watch so many movies to review them over the years that sometimes they just become a blur. I vividly remember watching this to review it because we were excited because the director is Rodney Asher, who did Room 237 about The Shining, which was so interesting.
Yes, it was.
But the more this went along, it became one of the most frightening things as we were watching it, because it was saying that this condition can almost be like passed along by suggestion.
Yes. Yeah, it was fascinating. It's a fascinating movie. It's an incredibly well-crafted documentary, and you get very involved. And then the longer you go in, once you're in it, you're trapped. You've already heard about it, and then they tell you. Sometimes it's passed on by and I thought to myself, if I fucking get this, I remember just really being sincerely full of anxiety that this was going to happen to me.
When we were trying to go to sleep,
yes.
that night, we're like, God damn. But it really is. It's terrifying when, they act out some of these things that, as you could tell from the trailer there, that these people have described seeing. And you're like, can you imagine trying to sleep and have that happen? My God.
And just FYI, there's a high likelihood that the nightmare is going to be a future Fright Club. So, because we really, really liked it. Ooh. It is sincerely scary.
It is. It is. It's such a real life terror, and really the things as far as reenactments go, they're pretty scary.
Yeah.
I mean, for things that usually reenactments are far removed from the actual happening, but they are pretty scary when they describe. And you can just imagine how terrifying it was to wake up and see some figure at the end of your bed and think that it's real.
The Shadow Man.
Yeah.
The Ash Man.
Yeah.
And then to just not be able to move at all. Yeah, it's a terrifying idea.
Terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
And that is why it is number one on sleep paralysis, a documentary about sleep paralysis called The Nightmare. Okay, we got a movie to show. We got a short film first to show. Very cool.
Yep.
And then we got a movie to show, and we'll talk after. Really quickly, next, Fright Club will be in the studio, and we're going to be looking at threequels.
That's right. The third installment, our favorite third installment in horror franchises. That's going to be the next Studio Fright Club.
Okay.
And the next Fright Club Live, Friday, July 12th.
Right.
We're going to show a remarkable and incredibly good Iranian horror film called Under the Shadow. It's such a great movie.
Yeah. Isn't that good?
It's
Isn't that
one
good?
of our favorites.
Yeah.
And we're going to show a short film called The Altruist, which is from Matt Smith. If you were here earlier this year, we showed another one of Matt Smith's short films, actually. I'm a huge fan of his, called The Provider. Do you remember the one where they sort of eat like these testicle brains that are growing inside an abandoned house? So that same guy, he made this other one called Altruist, which is exactly as weird. Love it, love it, love it. So that's what we have to look forward to. And then the podcast is going to be The Shadow of War in horror films.
Yeah. So again, that will be Friday, July 12th. So make it out if you can. Okay, I think that's it, right?
It is.
We've got the movie. We've got the short film from Randall Greenland and Jason Tostovan.
Yeah, they're the writers, and the director's Schrader
Thomas, who is the editor on our film Obstacle Corpse.
That's right.
So that'll be good. And then we hope to talk about it when you come down after. We'll talk about Borgman.
Just about 2 hours later.
That would make a great double feature with Bong Joon-ho's Parasite.
It would. Do you know the other movie it reminds me of? The Woman.
The Woman, yes. And it's not nearly as subtle as Parasite, but it's definitely hitting on a lot of the same themes of class, but it goes in very different ways, and I loved it. Yeah, I thought that was fantastic.
I even saw some similarities in things like the type of horror we saw in Speak No Evil, or Funny Games. Like how much of this is your fault? Like you're letting me do it.
Yeah,
I saw some of
like
that.
Like a horror of manners.
Horror of manners.
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it was plenty disturbing, to say the least. And the short was also pretty unnerving, beautiful loose ends. And I'm still wondering about the picture, the sleep paralysis picture, right? Is it just Camille doing a Dutch squat over Madame?
Yes. That's I think one of the historically first images that somebody painted of sleep paralysis is it's this little naked demon that is squatting over a sleeping woman. And that's what it's just called, and I think that is where this derives the most obvious connection with sleep paralysis.
Yeah. After I saw it to review it years ago, I started digging into some of the folklore, and you can read. You can go down a rabbit hole and read about the different types. And the one I mentioned earlier was German, but also Norwegian. And there's others that have different variations of the same thing that starts with, a little demon, a little sort of gnome or something that sits on you as you sleep. And then you see what happens afterwards.
Hello, I'm Noah. I don't know what to say. My heart's racing. That movie was so tremendously there was like a calming nature to it. I felt like I was on another planet, but I was so alive in that world, that existence. I loved how the movie began. It was such a just inviting, like, here you are and this is what we're doing. And there was such a surgical miracle to this film. I can't even I'm a writer, so I'm an asshole. So I'm trying to rhyme and do stuff. But yeah, and also a filmmaker, struggling, blah. I love this movie. I don't even know what to say. I want to watch it again.
I'm so glad.
I love how the end makes you think differently about the beginning when they're chasing him out of his hole.
Yeah.
And, they've obviously come onto him for something, and we got to get you out of here. And then by the end of it, he's got a new tribe, and they're marked.
One of the things I like about the beginning is that, for me, starting with the mass, I feel like you automatically, and then the guys with the guns and the people in the farmhouse, you automatically side with whoever it is they're chasing. Like, I don't know who or why, but I'm with the guy in the ground. I'm with that guy. And then later you're like, oh, that was the wrong team. I was on the wrong team.
There's a reason. There's a reason they're chasing him. But you talked about Parasite and class and privilege, and there's also some dark comedy in here as well that I caught a little more this time. But there's a lot to take in. It is a full 2 hours, so it's a little longer. But man, it sucks you in, sort of like they did. Sort of
exactly.
They just suck you into their world. You're like, what the hell?
What reminded me about the woman was how they were not just taking advantage of sort of the wealth and privilege and naivety of this family, but they were saving the children from that existence and pulling them into their own tribe, which I thought was just fascinating.
Yeah.
And the children were so willing to go.
Oh, I know. Yeah, because we saw her early on what the little girl was capable of. Yeah, she was fascinated.
Not just wrecking a teddy bear. She was willing to go the distance.
Yeah, she definitely was. Well, this is perfect because really go back to the beginning of Fright Club. This is the type of film that we always love to show because people have not seen, slipped through the cracks when it came out, and then gets that type of visceral reaction.
First, Marina with an N, that's the difference between Marina and Maria, is not a Mother of the Year award winner. But also the way they kept changing over and they never seemed to notice the difference. Oh, wait a minute, the doctor looks much like the woman is up there. And, I'm sorry, I forgot my tutu.
I love that. Yeah, that was really funny to have them. Yeah, it is really funny how when it's the dude who's hiring people, everything's fine. I need to pay no attention to. All of a sudden, there's 5 of them, and all this. And I love that. Oh, the garden is done. No, it's like a weird dance-off that we're seeing, and the garden is super not done.
Well, and the whole thing was just metaphorical. All they did was just come in and wreck everything.
Oh yeah, everything.
We're just going to tear up these trees and tear up the entire landscape of the garden.
That's what I forgot. When he said he was playing at being a gardener.
I love that. That's such a great line.
They were also playing at being humans.
Yeah, I love that. I'm playing at being a gardener. That was a great line.
Yeah, and even something as basically biblical as when a stranger shows up at your door and he looks like a vagabond. No, but all of a sudden he's all cleaned up. Well, yes, come on in. Same dude.
Yeah.
And he tells that story about, what does he say about Jesus? He's kind of a bore, isn't he, or something like that? Yeah, so you get there's bits of black comedy in there too, but it's fascinating. It's a fascinating film, and I'm glad you guys liked it because I was unsure.
Yeah.
I was unsure. So thank you so much. And we hope to see you.
Yeah,
next time.
I do though. Really quick, the bucket head people
love
in the
that.
swamp. God, I love that image. That was such a great image.
Yeah.
Yes, it did remind me of Night of the Hunter.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was very much like
a
art.
macabre kind of flower. They just kept planting more flowers.
Yeah, it was. They just kept playing with flowers. I love that.
Yeah,
Anyway,
loved it.
Thank you guys so much for coming
I'm glad
out.
you liked
Thank
it.
you very
so
much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, come back out next month for Under the Shadow. Absolutely brilliant movie. Just brilliant, glorious, gorgeous movie.
Until then, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Fright Club Podcast.
Stay